Hello, what's going on YouTube? This is J Money here, and I'm bringing you guys another video regarding side deck, if you will. Now, I do want to reiterate before I get started that you do in fact have to be subbed to the channel to receive, to be entered in the pot to receive the Firewall Dragon. Just in case those who commented and were not aware, you do have to in fact be subbed to be thrown into the pot. So keep that in mind, guys. Be sure you're subbed, and you know you'll have the chance to get that firewall. And I did hit 300 subs actually today, but I'm probably going to do the giveaway on the next video. I'm probably going to do a couple box openings of Extreme Forces, because I think I might buy some sealed product. I'm not sure, but if not, then you know it's okay. But without that being out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start off with all the side deck options for the next format. We're going to do this from scratch, so this is going to be fun. So starting off with the elephant in the room, we're going to start off with Pendulum Magicians and how they're played. First off, I want to say that we should not go back to the side cards that we had back in September of the September format, when Zeus and Dracos got the dick. You know, when it was just Pendulums and Dracos, ABCs and Trickstars. When it was those decks, we probably shouldn't be citing these same cards, because with Electromite into the game, the deck is going to be played differently. You know, it's not going to function the same way. So with that being said, you can still cite some of them, but take it with a grain of salt. So let's get started. Let's start off with the big elephant, Electromite itself, the card. Now, for those of you who are still on a rock, Electromite is a pendulum monster that takes two pendulums, any pendulums, and when you link summon it, you take any pendulum from your deck and place it face up in your extra deck, so it dodges Ash Blossom. Not only that, but you can also have the option to blow up any face up card you control and add any face up extra deck pendulum monster to the hand. So I'm assuming you want to get the same card that you put in the extra deck in the first place. And then on top of that, if a card once per turn is in your pendulum scales leaves the field, you draw a card. That can also be during your opponent's turn, or during your own turn, if your opponent flips over a time graph and blows up their skill. They can also draw that way, so keep that in mind. Now, that's pretty stupid. You get a draw, you get to dig for any pendulum monster, and you blow up a card, and you know, start some chains and set off some effects. Now, Ghost Ogre, in the sense, can actually stop these things, but if your opponent doesn't already have Astrograph Sorcerer, you don't want them to get access to it at all, by any means. So what do? Well, a few months ago, I did mention that Effect Veiler might end up seeing a return back in the metagame when we start getting past all these unaffected, non-targeting-ish decks. And when Spirals take a hit, Spirals might get put back a few notches. You'll still see play, but you know, Pendulums will probably be all the rage, and you want to absolutely shit all over Electromite and have them get absolutely no advantage. So with that being said, Veiler is a nice option, but you know, Ghost Ogre is also semi-good, because you do get rid of the two links, the two link pointers, alongside of they have to make another Electromite just to get the destroyed add and the draw. So Ogre is not too bad either. Now, if Electromite is not the issue for you, let's tackle the other side of the spectrum, and that is all the searching and all that good stuff. Now, with all the searches, you want to punish your opponent for searching. You know, obviously Mistake is a nice option. You know, it's okay, but it's a trap card. You have to go first. But, you know, it's fine. But if your opponent's not playing like Typhoon, if they like, you know, find a way to blow up their purple poison, Mistake might not be the best choice, which means Mistaken Rest might be a little bit more your speed. Simply for the fact that it's not tied to anything. It's not tied to the field. You know, it's pretty good. If Pendulums get enough representations, Roll actually might see play back in the main deck, because how many times are they searching? A lot. And that also brings me to my final little, and there's one more. Thunder King is also really good. It's very versatile. It's actually not only good against Pendulums, it's good against Tricksters as well. Some Trickster decks can actually play Thunder King as a nice little tech. You know, some people, instead of searching Candina, let's say if they already have it, they search Lilybell, the special Lilybell, and bounce it for Licorice, and normal the Thunder King, and sit on the Thunder King, and it actually works, especially if you have Reincarnation in hand. It's actually very dirty. I'm not gonna lie. Thunder King stops searching, and it's stops a special summon, so you can still stop an Electromite summon if you already have any of these other anti-search cards wrapped up in the bag. You know, a lot of these cards are very versatile. You know, Mistake and Mistaken Rest is good against Tricksters. Effect Veiler can be kind of good against Tricksters if your opponent doesn't have Licorice in hand already. You know, when they summon Candina. It's also good against Lightsworns. You know, Curios, the Lightsworn Dominion. So they can't get the Foolish and they can't get the Mill 3. They don't get the Minervas or any of that other stuff. Lumina gets stopped. Unizombie gets stopped, which is pretty strong. But the problem is Veiler still targets, which means you can still dodge and all that good stuff. There's some anti-targeting cards. You know, things like Guard Dragon can actually negate targeting if you had got Link monsters on the board. So that might not be, you know, Veiler, it's good. The moment all this unaffected non-targeting stuff leaves the scene, Veiler can actually shine a little bit. Especially if you need to make absolutely certain effects do not resolve, then Veiler's the card for you. But the last anti-search card I want to touch up on is Shared Ride, actually. Shared Ride is a card that lets you draw a card for each time your opponent adds a card to the hand. That does not include drawing, but what all can be searched in a Pendulum deck? Well, you can search off a Skullcrobat Joker, that's one draw. You can search off a Double Iris, that's another draw. You can search off of Star Pendulum Graph, that's a third draw. You can search off an Astrograph, that's a fourth draw. You can search off a Time Star Magician, that's a fifth draw. You can search off of Wavering Eyes, that's a sixth draw. Not only that, but Wavering Eyes and Double Iris are also at multiples, so that's also really good, and that's also pretty important. They can search off a Duelist Alliance, so that's a seventh draw. And so Shared Ride, in a sense, is just like Max C, to where your opponent will damn near end their turn, because they do a lot of searching, and they do not want to give you a full hand. They might just search the one time if you chain this on a Duelist Alliance, and they can summon maybe Electromite because they don't draw off the add back to hand, and you don't draw off the draw either. So they can sit on the Electromite and Pendulum summon it, and then go into Maguska, but they don't search. They don't want to search their Time Graphs. They don't want to search all these other cards. So it can make dealing with the deck a little bit easier for you. And in that sense, speaking of drawing, Max C is also incredibly good against the deck now. It wasn't in September because your opponent could literally Pendulum summon and then overlay into a Maguska, and that would be fine for them. You know, they gave you just a +1 to shut all your monsters down, and that was super difficult to deal with. However, little do people know, or maybe a lot of people do know, but Electromite, only the draw effect is a hard one to return. The other effects, the digging for pendulums and putting them face up in the extra deck and the blow up to add back is not a hard once return. So you can literally bust out 3 Electromites and apply both of those effects 3 times, which means your opponent is special summoning a lot. Not only that, but pendulum decks are using these nice little techs to special summon without committing normal summon. Things like Foolish Burial to send Dark Worm to grave so you can special Dark Worm. That Abyss Actor card that can special summon itself when it's in the scales. There's things like that, so you can get yourself a nice little draws alongside of an Electromite draw that's automatically a +2 if they even decide to pursue a pendulum summon from the get-go. But if not, they can just send Dark Worm and you chain Max C and they normal a card and go straight into Bagusa. You still netted a +1 off the Max C. Max C is still an auto win card. It's so terrible, it's so degenerate. I do not even advocate the card even going to 3. I just want to just ban the card. But, you know, I have to mention it because it's still the best card in the game, regardless. But let's say, even amongst all of these searching and the Electromite effects, let's say that those aren't the problems. Let's say the problems are the spell and traps. You know, the time pendulum graph, the big elephant. Well, cards like typical spell and trap destruction is good, but Night Beam is actually a nice little choice because they only set 1 card and they don't have any other things that are chainable on the board, because typically Cypher Lord Omega has already used its effect to rip a card out of hand during their turn. So with that being said, Night Beam is actually really good at sniping time pendulum graphs. Without them being flipped over, they can't chain. There's nothing else that they can actually chain to, which gives you an easier time to deal with pendulums when you don't have to worry about a double destruction. But also the beauty about this is if you're playing Ghost Ogre and they've already seen the Night Beam at a previous game, they can shotgun the Night Beam, which can make Ghost Ogre itself live, because Ghost Ogre generally isn't live against Time Pendulum Graph because generally people go to resolve the effect upon flipping it over, which makes Ghost Ogre not live. But if it's already face up and then they go to activate the Pendulum Graph in the middle of your combo, Ghost Ogre is now live. Therefore, you can actually disrupt them and destroy it. Another nice little card that I would advocate playing again is Typhoon. Any pendulum heavy format, Typhoon is really good in, especially with Wavering Eyes running around. If your opponent goes for a Wavering Eyes and you Typhoon them, their turn is really crippled. Sometimes their turns can just be over. They can just be done, and there's nothing they can do about it. Not only that, but if you do draw this late and you're going second and they flip a time pendulum graph, you can also chain Typhoon from the hand to disrupt them that way. So Typhoon is actually a nice solid option. Other cards such as like Anti-Spell and stuff like that, it's fine too. If you're wanting to play a lot of monster centric decks and you're playing Night Beam and they shotgun time pendulum graph, you can also play cards like, you know, Trap Eater, but Trap Eater is like a subpar side card and it's only meant for 1 card. You want more versatile cards, but you know, Typhoon is only meant for pendulum matchups, unfortunately, and it's not, you know, versatile against like Trick Stars or any of those other nice little matchups. So I wouldn't advocate it, but you know, just in case you need you absolutely need to have the removal or whatnot and you want a body on board, you know, this is another way you can do that. And so Spell and Trap hate, such as, you know, Anti-Spell Fragrance, maybe Imperial Order. I still wouldn't advocate Imperial Order simply because you can still set up scales and all that good stuff, so I wouldn't do it personally. So yeah, with that being said, we can talk about Trick Stars just for a tad bit, because Trick Stars aren't really going to change all that much. You still want to stop the Scapegoat and you still want to stop Reincarnation if you're deck really struggles with it. So Chaos Hunter is really good in that respect for stopping reincarnation, unless your opponent starts getting smart and keeps the Candida on the field so they can still reincarnation you, which means you can't drop Chaos Hunter if they don't summon Licorisk. If you are counting on that as a way to shut down the disruption. Not only that, but even with Chaos Hunter, you can't banish reincarnation from the graveyard, which is actually really good. But, you know, Trickstars, again, the deck's not really going to change all that much. There's a couple of stun cards that they might play that are coming out in Extreme Force, but that might be just about it. But what I want to talk more about in terms of side deck is 60 card decks, i.e., you know, Lightsworn variant decks, anything that can abuse Curios to Lightsworn Dominion, because as I told you, Grinder Golem can get it out even as of now in the TCG. Any mill decks or Lightsworn decks, Lightsworn Zombies, can really abuse the card, and I actually think they can actually go up another level simply because of Curios and all that good stuff. Now, you know, there can be Chaos Hunter in itself can also deal with that matchup, especially the Lightsworn Zombie build. There have been times where I've literally ended my opponent's turn after they have used Tyranny Solitaire to go into Uni Zombie because Chaos Hunter hits the board. Their Mizukis are dead, their Fairy Tale Snows are dead, their Spirit Masters are dead because they can't banish it. It's just all around not a good time for your opponent if they can't banish to get their effects with Chaos Hunter looming around on the field. Not only that, but there's a couple of interesting cards that I would like to bring to light. One of them, and I've used a few times when Grass is still 3, Fiend Comedian is surprisingly really good. You can play it in a mirror match of 60 card decks, or if you don't want to, you can also play it in your own deck to literally fuck over your opponent. Now, let's say Grass does go back to 3, or let's say it stays in at 1 and your opponent actually has it. Now, what are some of the benefits of this card? First off, let's read the effect. Most of the time, if you're playing a 60 card deck, you want to call it wrong, but if you're not playing a 60 card deck, you want to call it right. I mean, if you're playing a 60 card deck, you want to call it, you know, it doesn't even matter what it's called. You're still going to ruin your opponent. But you toss a coin and you call it, you know, call heads or tails. If you call it right, all of your opponent's cards in the graveyard are all banished immediately. That's huge. If your opponent resolves Grass and this actually resolves and you call it right, your opponent essentially loses the game. But if you call it wrong, you send a number of cards equal to the number of cards in your opponent's graveyard from your deck to the graveyard. So if your opponent is going off with Solar Recharges, Charge of the Light Brigade, Minerva, Curios, and all that good stuff, and they have 17 cards in the graveyard, and you call it wrong, you get to mill 17 cards, which is essentially another Grass for you if you are playing a 60 card deck. But you can use this to completely fuck over your opponent's graveyard and they lose the game. It's literally like if you're playing any sort of Lightsworn variant deck or any mill deck, you're going to want this card in your side deck or even in your main deck, really. But it's just such a blowout card either way you look at it. Either way, if you call it right or wrong, you're blowing your opponent out and they're losing the game. Any 60 card deck does not want their grave banished, and if you are playing a 60 card deck, you're getting one hell of a time when you mill. Not to mention, if you manage to go first and set up your own graveyard, it's a win more card, really. You're going to dump even more cards to the graveyard for no reason, getting snows, affects more live, and all that good stuff. So, a card like that is not that bad. Anything that is banishing grave, dimensional fissure, different dimension ground. You know, different dimension ground is also good. It banishes anything for the turn. A 1-turn macro, or you can play macro itself, but different dimension ground is nice. It's real nice, and it's nice to know that it only lasts for a turn rather than backfiring 3 turns later when you need your graveyard. That's not it's really solid. Not only that, but cards like Abyss Dweller, it hasn't seen play recently ever since Spirals came into the mix, because we've had to have really tight extra decks. But with Lights Wardens, any sort of mill deck starting to come up because of Curios, you can bet your ass Abyss Dweller will find his way right back to the meta, no problem. You know, DD Crow is still nice, but you know, it only gets rid of 1 card, unfortunately, unless you really want to snipe that one Mizuki. Then you can do that. I suppose it's fine. But banishing your opponent's grave is real good, or turning off grave effects, you know, things like Soul Drain and all that good stuff. Soul Drain is actually nice, actually, I'm not gonna lie. Not only that, but cards like Different Dimension Ground, Macrocosmos, and all that stuff is actually good against Pendulums themselves, because it can sit here and the scales won't, anything going to the face-up extra deck, do not go to the extra deck. They will actually get banished. That's facts. So anything, you can also side this card against Pendulums if you don't want them racking up a absurd amount of advantage turn 1. You can flip this and you can probably end your opponent's turn right there, because they don't want to play into having everything get banished and having no resources for when they go for that Pendulum summon with, you know, after they did all their shenanigans with Heavy Metal Foes Electromite, which is really, really solid. This is really good, and it also stops ABCs and their tracks as well. I see this card really starting to get sided a lot, because it can end a lot of people's turns. It can even end Light Swarm players' turns. I mean, that was the primary reason. But this only affects monsters, unfortunately. It doesn't affect cards like Macro does. You know, because sometimes you do want to get the reincarnations and stop them from hitting the graveyard, you know, in that respect. So that is something you need to keep in mind, that it does not banish spell and traps. So but any Pendulums and their scales, even though they're treated as spell or traps, the moment they are removed from the field, they are treated as monsters, so they will get banished. So I believe that should be, well, there's one more thing. With the release of FAs and their new support, I can see a lot of people playing it, and there's a lot of different builds. There's a lot of different plus plays you can make. For instance, you normal Armageddon Knight and you dump the Shrudo, you use the Shrudo, and you special summon the Arm Knight, and you use the Arm Knight and the Shrudo, you make Ancient Fairy Dragon. You play a field spell, and you use Ancient Fairy Dragon to blow up the field spell. You add another field spell, and that field spell will trigger, adding you another card. Any other FA card, it could be an FA monster, but let's say I decided to add Pit Stop to hand. I can use Ancient Fairy Dragon's effect at that point to special summon one of the FAs. Hang on Maka would probably be the one. I would activate said Pit Stop, reduce this level to 2 or down, and draw a card. And then I would use the effect of FA Tuner monster in hand to special summon that said monster and reduce this level even lower. It would go down to level 1 because it can't go below level 1, and then you would increase the FA Tuner monster's level by 1, and then you would immediately activate your new field spell that you added. And not only that, but you add a field spell off of the tuner monster, and you would end up bumping the FA's monster level by 3, I suppose, because you would get a 2-level boost, and then you would use the effective boost, and that'd be fine and dandy. Unfortunately, you probably wouldn't be able to use the FA tuner to sync with the Ancient Fairy Dragon to make your little Synchro Monster, because you already played your field spell, but it doesn't matter because you netted a +3, and then you activate Ties of the Brethren and you summon your other 2, and that's just, you know, so balanced, fine and dandy. But, you know, it's still machine-based archetype. With the new field spell, you can't target, which is good. But they're still machines nonetheless, so along with ABCs, System Down can still put in equally as much work against FAs as it does against ABCs, which, if you're worried about a deck like FAs, you shouldn't be, but in case you are, System Down is a 1-card out to the whole deck. Yeah, you can't, even the Synchro Monster can't be destroyed by battle, can't be destroyed by card effects, and then you can't target with a field spell. You know, Hang On Monk is unaffected by damn near anything, as long as this level's high enough. You know, Sonic Meister can't be destroyed by battle, by anything big, really. And all that stuff. All these anti-destruction, no target, but System Down still fucks the deck in the ass, unfortunately. And so, if you're worried about that and or ABCs, you can play System Down. So, guys, that is it for this little video. You know, again, the moment the ban list hits, the side decks are really going to start changing. I really genuinely think a lot of more Lightsworn variant decks, a lot more 60-card mill decks, even Infernoids, I can see them coming out of the woodworks now that if Spiral takes a hit, 60-card decks will go up, especially with Curios, because it's not that hard to bring out Curios, especially if you're playing Grinder Golem, if you're playing the Predaplant engine, even if you're just playing any sort of Lightsworn stuff, you're playing like Unizombie and well, Curios is attributes, not types, but different attributes, okay. So, regardless, I can see a lot of 60-card decks coming out, a lot more Pendulum decks coming out, so you might want to tutor your side decks against Pendulums and Lightsworn type decks. Anti-Graveyard, which can also work against Pendulums as well. You know, so let me know what you guys think about these new side deck options. I mean, Ghost Ogre and Droll have already been, you know, solidified into the meta, but all these other cards, you know, let me know what you guys think about these. Did I miss something? Is there something that, you know, that could be a little bit better against Pendulums or against Lightsworn and all that good stuff? Let me know down in the comments below. And again, if you want to win that Firewall, just comment down below Firewall Dragon 2. You're not going to be entered a second time if you've already been entered, sorry. This is just for new viewers and if you were not subbed. So thank you guys very much. This is J Money and I'm signing out.